morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today and for helping us launch our speaker series, An Artist's Journey. I first want to thank Anita Wood. Without her work, we would not have gotten this off the ground. So thank you very much, Anita. And I just wanted to say that we have a great lineup going forward into 2023 for the speaker series. And I hope that you will continue to come out to these events and support the CSPWC. So today we are featuring Doug Mays. Doug has been a member of, first of all, I want to tell you the title of his event is An Artist's Journey to the CSPWC and Beyond. So Doug has been a member since 2004. What's really excited me about Doug's talk is that he told us the other day that he painted his first watercolor at the age of 10, and he's going to give us some details on that. That is really exciting to me. It's 65 years of painting. So that is a remarkable accomplishment. The other thing that I wanted to mention about Doug is that he went to art school. He had a career in architecture, and his career, as I said, spans 65 years. He's been teaching watercolors since for about 25 years, maybe more. So without further ado, I give you Doug Mays. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. And I want to echo what Sam said about the work that both Anita and Sam have put to get this series started. And I'm happy to be on the first session for it. And I guess we're going to be here for about an hour. And my plan was not to do a demonstration because my demonstrations would take close to an hour themselves. So I'm just going to talk about, as Sam said, my journey with not only watercolor, but with art in general. And it really started probably when I was in grade 5 in the East End of Hamilton. I'm born and raised in Hamilton, but I lived in Stony Creek, the east side of Hamilton, for the lion's share of my life so far. Growing up in Stony Creek, which was really just a little village of about 3,000 people. It's much larger now. It's now a city by itself, but it is part of the Hamilton. And in grade 5, of course, we all took different art lessons and painted, etc. But I remember my very first watercolor, which was quite large actually by today's standards. It would be a little less than a full sheet of paper, but and I'm sure the paper was not good quality paper, as I recall. But I remember that painting, and I can remember what the mood of it was and what the shapes were, and it sat actually, it won an award of sorts. It got recognition and sat in one of the merchant windows on Main Street actually it was called King Street in Stony Creek. It was in Wepler's general store for about a month. And I used to walk by it almost every day and think, hey, I did that. And that was kind of neat. And, it was a watershed event for me because at that point I realized, gee, I really like art. And I think I want to continue to be an artist, whether it was going to be full-time, part-time, or whatever. Well, in essence, it became more part-time because I felt that I needed to get a day job of sorts where I um, studied architecture at college, and so I actually went to work for the Steel Company of Canada in 1972 when I was 25 years old. And I worked in the purchasing department, and I stayed in purchasing for 30 years, retiring in 1955 after 30 years, and I was able to leave with a full pension, and so it was a natural transition for me to say, you know, goodbye Stelco, hello art world. And I had started to teach watercolors actually about 2 or 3 years prior to retiring. And I taught, my first gig was at the Oakville Art Society, not far from here. And I was taking a workshop with Zoltan Szabo was our instructor. And you can't get much better than Zoltan Szabo. And one of the students, we were all crammed into this small studio for a week, but one of the students came up to me about midway and said, "Do you teach watercolor?" And I thought, well, no, I don't, but I've thought of it. and and she said, "Come and see me. I handle hiring instructors, or watercolor instructors." So I went, and that's how it all started, way back in the late '90s, actually. And so I've been teaching watercolor for over 20 years, and I quite enjoy it. It's allowed me to not only meet other quality people that also enjoy art and watercolor in particular, but it's allowed my wife and I to do tremendous amount of travel where I take my workshops perhaps to France or Spain or Italy. We've done vacations down in San Miguel de Allende for a number of years. We winter down there. I get to teach my craft in San Miguel. And so it really has opened up some great avenues for us, and we've met so many good people, and that's maybe one of the bigger pluses of not only doing art, and many of you know this anyway, because many of you belong to different art groups, but anyway, in 2004, I applied for the CSPWC. I felt CSPWC was the pinnacle. It's Canadians' Watercolor Society, not unlike the National Watercolor Society or the Royal or the American Watercolor Society. These are all recognized. CSPWC certainly carried tremendous amount of prestige. I mean, after all, when you think of 1925, two of the group of seven, Casson and Carmichael, were instrumental in getting this group together. And that in itself, what a legacy. And I'm proud to say, over on the wall here in my computer room, this is where I do my online workshops each week right now, but on the wall I have my certificate, all nicely framed, and it's in a place of honor for sure. So I started teaching basically weekly classes at night, not unlike happens even today. And then I decided that I felt I wanted to do more of my own workshops where I could do a little bit of traveling or get invited by art groups to come in and do a one-day or multi-day session. So I did quite a number of those, and I've done them in Ontario, Quebec, down in Newfoundland a couple times. I quite enjoy that. I haven't been west yet, although I've had a couple people interested in having me, but I haven't got out there yet to do a workshop, so maybe one day. But anyway, I'm going to just quickly show a few of the paintings I've done, either maybe this year or last year, some of the ones, but I want to talk about this. Sam and Anita.
Before you do that, Doug,
Yeah.
can I just interject and ask you a question?
Sure.
So when you said that you did you reach out to specific societies? How did you uh, garner those workshops? How did you get
Um, Actually, I believe a lot of it is word of mouth. Um, you know, having taken workshops myself, because I was a student as well, and I took workshops with what I would consider today some of Canada's top watercolorists, and just, you know, it's just the network that continues to get bigger and bigger and thicker, and before long your name gets out there, or I hear about something and then I inquire. So I would say word of mouth more than anything. Now I do have a website and that has helped as well, and being on Facebook allows me to post some of the work I do, so people can see my work and say, gee, you know, I think I might like to try that style or whatever. So, and that's essentially how it just takes time. If we're patient enough, it takes time. Now, I do want to say one thing. I've belonged to other art groups like the Central Ontario Art Association. One time I was president for a few years, maybe 10, 15 years ago now. I can't remember the exact time, but I've really focused only on the CSPWC. That's the only one I've applied for. I haven't, you know, I know there's other federal and or national and provincial art groups, but I haven't really pursued those. I guess I could one day. My focus is really watercolor, although I do some acrylics. I have one right behind me here that I do from time to time. But as I tell people, I work at acrylics, but I play at watercolor. And there's a big difference there because watercolor for me, while it's a challenging medium, as we all know, very challenging at times, and humbling, it to me, it gives me the greatest satisfaction at the end of the day, and that's what I look for in my art. And I do have this I wanted to show you, and it's a book I put together. It's one of those online books, and I created this in 2008. So, and it basically is a picture book, a retrospective of paintings I did over a 5-year period from 2004, which is the year I was accepted into the society, and then the remaining 4 years, right up to 2008. And I do have a little bit of a blurb about my philosophy. And if you can indulge me, I'd like to read one small excerpt from it. And it's capturing the light is one of the great thrills of watercolor and a characteristic that is key to my painting style. I've often said it's the darks that make the lights. And to that end, I've never been shy about placing measured amounts of dark values in my paintings. They provide muscle to the composition and enhance the effectiveness of light. And I encourage my students to also use the wide range of tonal values, which I hand these out at all my workshops as well. And it's my value scale, 1 to 9. It's a simpler value scale, 1 white, 9 black, and 5 is mid-gray. And that way I can communicate to them during the workshop. I'll say, gee, you know, if that shape were a number 7, I think it would read better, something of that nature. So that's why I've made these up, because it is key to a good watercolor, as I say. So anyway,
That's
I'm
a
not.
beautiful book.
It is. I'm really pleased with it, and as I say, it's not. It probably is still available, although I haven't
That's
purchased any for a while, but I'm sure
uh,
I can still.
Yeah,
resurrected.
that's what I
Um,
wondered, how, if someone wanted to purchase that book, how would we,
Well, the company is out of the US and it's Blurb, BLURB.
I've heard of
And,
them, yeah.
and
I just have a thought, Doug, if you don't mind
yeah.
me interrupting here. Would it be
Mhm.
possible for you just to send me some information that I can post to all our members on your book? And,
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
and that way, if anybody is interested in seeing it, or
Mhm.
is there an online version? Is it an ebook that we can actually look at and download?
You can look at a few pages. They don't give you too much. They
Right.
give you a little bit of an appetizer, but they don't give you the full meal.
Okay.
So you could do that, yeah, by all means. And
So I can put the link to that book when I send out the recording to
you
everyone.
could,
So,
sure.
okay,
you
thank
could,
you. I
yeah,
look forward to
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
it looks beautiful.
Thank you.
does.
Yeah, I just happened to have a copy on the bookshelf here, so I thought I would show you that one today. So anyway, I mean, I could take you through our home here, and we're in Ancaster, by the way, and Ancaster is on the west side of Hamilton. We still are considered Hamilton. We pay Hamilton taxes, etc. But my wife and I moved here 4 years ago. Now, I should say, I've got 2 grown daughters, and I've got 4 grandchildren that are, for the most part, all grown up as well. And they all live close by, so it's a family affair in many ways. But I'll just go through just a few ideas of what I've painted over the years, and this is memories of the Saguenay River in Quebec. And this is one of my favorites, and I really don't want to sell that one. To me, it's just a favorite. And here's one I painted in a recent online workshop, and it's just an autumn creek. And this was a couple weeks ago where I painted the flowers of San Miguel for everybody. And now this one has a lot of meaning to me as well. And this is a this is called Memories of Charlevoix, Charlevoix, Quebec, on the north shore of the St. Lawrence. A beautiful area, and I believe all artists need to go there one day and see the color. If you can go in September, October, the color is magnificent. But this was one of the paintings. It wasn't the painting, but it was similar to the one that got me accepted into CSPWC. So
I
it
love
has a
how,
lot of meaning.
I
Yeah.
love how you've let the watercolor run in the background. That's just
Yeah,
gorgeous.
there are
Just
blossoms forming here, and I just worked those blossoms into the motif of the painting. So I don't worry about blossoms, and there's one that resembles perhaps Northern Lights, but that'll give you just an idea. Now, here's where I actually do my workshops each week for everybody. This is my board and my camera, which is right here. I should mention to everyone that there's a person, I'm not going to mention the name, but there's a person who's taken a number of my workshops who also helped out other art instructors transition over to online or Zoom workshops. And she recommended I use an iPad. And I had an iPad, and I was trying different cameras and spending a significant amount of money trying to get the right camera and lighting, and I was striking out the first few months. The colors were washed out, the resolution was not good, but she said, do the iPad, try the iPad. And I have not looked back with it. It's been wonderful. And it's an iPad Pro. They're not cheap. I know they're probably a little over $1,000 now, depending. But if anyone is interested in getting into doing online workshops, this is what I recommend: is the iPad. And anyway,
can you just describe for us how you have that, how you have it hooked up? Is it dangling
yeah.
from the ceiling?
I can, yeah. I bought a stand that will and the it holds the iPad, it clamps the iPad. And if I can come in with a third camera here, if Anita, if you can watch for my uh, my request to come in, and
I'm watching it right now and I see that you are. Okay.
okay.
Just a minute
it.
here.
I'm not going to use any audio because then you'll get feedback. Let's see now.
I'm going to give you a speaker view spotlight with that as well.
Okay. Can you see it? I don't see it here anyway. Oh, wait a minute. Here. I better share the. Oops. Let's do it this way. Okay.
There you
we
go. Your,
There
your
we go.
camera's visible now.
Yeah.
Here you go.
So here's the stand. Now here's the board I was just showing you, the painting, and there's the base of the stand, and it's like it's not sort of a gooseneck of sorts here, and then here's the iPad on top here. So yeah, I just have to get up a little higher here. I got to stand on my, and it's asked me to join audio. Okay. So yeah, so there's the iPad there, and as I say, it works really well. And sure, you're going to have some little glitches and adjustments that you have to make. I'm going to leave now. I don't think you need. Or do you want me to show a little bit of my artwork as well? Because I don't want to get anybody too dizzy, but I can show you just
Yeah.
a little bit of my
Keep-
artwork.
keep
I'm
your-
going to stay on this floor though.
Okay, sure. I think we would all love to see it.
Yeah, here are my 4 grandchildren. That was about 8 years ago, I guess. I did these watercolors of my 4 grandchildren.
Would
Three
you
How are
turn
you-
girls and
turn
how
your
are you
phone sideways?
sorry? Oh yeah.
Able to turn, that's it. Yeah, there we go.
How are you presenting them without being framed? Are they attached to a panel?
Actually, I had those plaqued.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's another term, but they call it placket here.
Okay. Good.
And you can, and they're quite easy to, and quite inexpensive actually. And they have a little slot at the back. It's like a fiber board of sorts that they're mounted on, but they're quite inexpensive really to like about maybe $15 each to have the watercolor paper actually glued to the base. And anyway, it works. Here's my acrylic. I'm not going to show you too many acrylics because I'm here to talk about. Now I'm going to have to take my headset off, so I won't be talking. I'm just going to quickly go out into the hallway here and just show you a few of my paintings. I'm not going downstairs though. Okay.
Sounds great. Oh no. What the heck just happened? Oh my gosh. I have a black screen. Can you hear me? What the-
I can hear you, Sam, and I can see you, and I can see Doug's work. So I don't know why you would have a
My
black screen.
screen just went black. I'm just going to.
Why don't you sign out and come back?
Okay. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to just drop this camera now. That's my iPhone anyway. So I have the ability to come in with different cameras, but I use my laptop as my my main camera so that I can see the process of when I'm painting the painting. I can see it developing because the laptop allows me to push the image back, and so I can see where I need to maybe add a bit more value, or maybe soften up some of the edges. Maybe there's too many hard edges in certain locations. So it really is an important stage for me to in the overall process, is to be able to, and we all do it. I mean, artists will, stand back away from their easel, 15, 20 feet, so that they can see, as I say, the gestalt of the painting, so that they can see how it's progressing. Does it have balance? Does it have harmony and movement and so on? They're all important. And when I teach watercolors, I could probably take most of the lessons that I've created, and I've created over 30 lessons over the years that specifically deal with whether it's composition, tonal values, the design elements, etc. But I could probably apply most of those to any medium, any visual medium, whether it's oil, acrylic, pastel. They would all apply, really. So, but I only teach watercolor. As I say, I would leave painting acrylics, or teaching acrylics. I leave that up to the people that have been doing it more than I have. But I feel comfortable teaching watercolor, at least my approach to watercolor. And of course, there's so many different approaches one could take, and styles. And
I have a question for you too, Doug.
Sure.
Have you always had, I've been following you, and your watercolors are very, very loose. And I don't think that you use any masking fluid, or if you do, it's very minimal. So have you
Yes.
always had this loose style, or has your style progressed over the years?
I think I'm probably like most artists that start off with a very tight, detailed approach. Because I think in your early stages, when you're getting to understand a medium, regardless of what medium, we as artists are looking for an endorsement or a pat on the back that says, hey, you did a nice job drawing out the composition. Gee, you did a nice job mixing those colors. They're so lifelike, and it's those endorsements I think we strive for. And once we get comfortable with the ability to, and by the way, I've always drawn my whole life. I've been drawing from a very young age, and so I feel quite comfortable doing it. But mixing colors and understanding the physical nature of a medium. I did a workshop. Well, it was at a members meeting just a week ago for the Toronto Watercolor Society, and they have some really quality watercolors. And I always feel a little intimidated going up there and telling these people. I say it's like preaching to the choir for the most part. But I said to them, I said, for anybody new to this medium, watercolor medium, I said, they have to learn. I always feel that beginners, novice have to learn the physical nature of the medium. And it's very simple, how pigment and water and time all relate. Those are three elements that are key. And if you can get those three elements and understand them, and then practice them, do the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours if you have to. Okay, I'm not there yet. I'm not 10,000 hours, but I'd like to think I'm on my way.
Doug,
And
it's funny that you should mention that because that was introduced to me at the very beginning of my journey with watercolor. And it's a funny story that I'll share with you sometime. But yeah, it's the Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours is definitely how you get to improve your watercolors.
yeah, yeah. And people will ask me, they'll say, gee, Doug, how long will it take me to get to paint like this or this? And I'll say, I don't measure it in weeks, months, or years. I measure it by how many times are you committed to put a paintbrush with pigment on a blank piece of paper. I said, that's where you're going to learn. I mean, and it's got to be the repetition. Yes, you're going to make mistakes, but I use the analogy of Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was one of the greatest home run hitters ever in Major League Baseball, but he struck out a tremendous number of times. And watercolors can go through the same thing. You know, we can strike out a lot, but it's every once in a while we hit a home run, and that's what keeps us coming back to that blank piece of paper. And I think that's something that we should never let today's watercolor, if it doesn't turn out, don't let it discourage you from doing more. Because I really do find that a number of artists give up on watercolor sometimes because they get frustrated with it. It's not working out. And they know that maybe an oil or an acrylic is more forgiving because they can scrape it off, they can gesso over it, and they can do it again. Watercolor doesn't offer you that kind of flexibility. However, boy, when you do a watercolor that gets some attention, there's nothing greater, in my opinion, than having a fresh watercolor with sparkle. And I know that, you know, we can debate you know, why watercolor doesn't necessarily get the same respect or attention that, say, an oil or an acrylic or a pastel does. Because we know that going into like a private gallery, they tend to want to sell those other mediums at a higher price, and they get it. But that notwithstanding, there are still a good number of people out there that enjoy watercolor and respect watercolor. And I would suspect that many of them have tried watercolor and they know how demanding they can be. But anyway, that's my little blurb on watercolor versus the other mediums. So, but I do acrylic because it's water-based and it's fairly benign, you know, from a, you know, the smell and the toxicity, etc. It's environmentally more friendly than some of the other mediums as well. But watercolor is still my go-to medium for sure. So I don't know where I need to go with this, other than I think I've given you a pretty good background of how I've sort of moved ahead with watercolor in the last 20 plus years. So unless you have any questions or is an area that maybe you would like me to touch on, please let me know.
I was just going to tell you one little, just a very short story. You mentioned Zoltan Zabel. He was my first real watercolor instructor as well. And I studied with him in Ancaster for about 4 years. Just as a matter of fact, he passed away and I was enrolled in his last workshop as well. But when I first started out, I was very intimidated. And I asked him, I says, do you ever tell anyone to just quit painting in watercolors? He looked at me, he says, no. He says, watercolor's going to tell you, that's not my job. I have never forgotten that. I love that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's good. He was a pretty amazing watercolorist and a good instructor as
Yeah.
well. I quite enjoyed the workshop I had with him, and it was in Burlington, and I can't remember the year now, but yeah, he and I've got a couple of his books, and he signed one of them, and the other people that influenced me, some of them I'd never met, but obviously, but uh, Edgar Whitney.
Mm.
I talk about Edgar Whitney a lot because he and I own a couple of his books as well because I think he really did get to the meat of watercolor and again he talked about the design elements and the principles of design and how important they are and so I quite enjoy Edgar Whitney's philosophy and there are a couple of watercolors who of course they were over 100 years ago, but John Singer Sargent is one of my favorite and I try to emulate in some ways his style, his not composition so much because he had the ability to, you know, to paint things that I just don't, you know, being here in Canada, I wouldn't get to paint the same subject matter always. But and the other one I really have got to enjoy, although he did oils as well, is Joaquin Sorolla, um,
Mm.
who also painted around the same time as Sargent, and I think they may have shared ideas too. But he was Spanish artist, and I really enjoy his subject matter and his coloring as well. So yeah, but you know there are going back to Edgar Whitney, of course he taught a number of the strongest American watercolors, and they even wrote a book talking about Edgar Whitney as well. So um, you know he did teach a lot of good contemporary watercolors. Yeah.
So the piece that you have on display there on the right, where is that again?
Well, that one's probably out of my head. Now,
Okay.
people will ask me where did you where do you what do you use as your inspiration? Well, I have three ways. I use photo reference quite often. Well, I'll be somewhere and I'll say, oh, I like this. I'll take a picture of it. And then, so I use photo reference. I do plein air as well, which I'm sure we all do from time to time when the weather's right. And my imagination, I'll put scenes together. This was such a scene. This one, this is a winter scene from the Lower Laurentians in Quebec.
Mm.
And I took some winter photos a few years ago. We were happening to be down. I was visiting friends in the Lower Laurentians, and it was it was very snowy then, and so I got some really good photos then too. So
Mhm.
yeah, but I do, as I said, I like doing all kinds of autumn scenes as well. I don't just do winter, although winter is I don't know if you can see that it's got plastic over it, but
Oh, yes.
that was the one I did for the Toronto Watercolor Society a week ago. It's just an autumn road scene. So I like to do the um,
Mm.
I like to do the warm palette as well. And there's another waterfall that I did,
That's great.
and I did a floral. I like doing florals as well. I mean, they're because they allow me to bring a lot of abstract within the composition, and I do enjoy abstract. And I can also talk about negative painting, and so you know every composition tends to be able to maybe highlight a certain aspect of art, whether it's composition or negative painting, as they say, or maybe the color palette, talking about complementary colors and so on. and even how to mix colors, because I don't buy secondary colors. I buy primary colors, and I mix my secondaries with my primaries. So that allows me to economize on my cost of buying watercolor pigment, which, and by the way, I tend to use more Winsor Newton than anything. It's sort of been my go-to manufacturer. So, but yeah. My paper, I pretty much use 140-pound cold press, depending, again, what's a good quality and what's got a good price. I've been using Fabriano Artistico for a number of years. I've tried some Strathmore, which works quite well. I've had Arches over the years, Winsor Newton. I mean, they're all quality watercolor paper, but 140-pound cold press seems to be the one I'm comfortable with anyway. And I don't stretch my paper. I just allow it to, it's going to do its natural buckling when it's wet, but when it dries, they dry very flat. So I'm happy with that. So yeah.
When you work from photos, do you print off a photograph, or do you have a setup with a screen? Or how do you
Yeah, actually, I don't have one in front of me. I tend to have a photograph in front of me, but I also yeah, I get rid of them afterwards because I'd have too many. But every time I'm doing a demonstration, I do a value sketch, and this is the size of the value sketch that I use. And so I'll do a quick value sketch. It might take me 10 minutes or so, 10, 12 minutes, something like that. And I'm just looking to see if I have one. I think I do have one actually up here somewhere. I'll show you. I'm doing a workshop in Grimsby next weekend. And so I've got the paper laid out. And here's the value sketch, which this is going to be a winter scene with a person walking with their dog through the and here's another one I'm doing of fall colors and with the stonework, etc. So that'll give you an idea. I do have I don't have the photograph, but I usually print off the photograph that I'm using, and it comes out as an 8x10, and I put it up just under my laptop here, and so I can look over at it and say, oh yeah, I want to put some strong reds in here, for instance, for the sumac, and then and it just as a reminder. But the value sketch, I encourage people to do value sketches each and every time they do a painting. And mainly because of the thing that Edgar Whitney said, and I always throw out Whitneyisms. I call them Whitneyisms, but and he said, do a value sketch. It shows you the mistake before you make it. And that's quite true, because why do you want to start a painting with, whether you're using a reference, like just a photo reference, but start a painting and commit all this time to painting and then realize, oh, that's not going to work because I've got maybe shapes that have a juxtaposition. So you get a certain shape that looks like it's in front of a background shape looking like it's in front of a foreground shape. Well, you can't do that. And that's why these guys here are so helpful, because for the for the amount of time you've committed to this, it's small. And it'll tell you, oh yeah, I got to move this over because I've got an interference, because there's never a perfect photograph anyway. I mean, I always move things around to suit the pattern, and so they will help you so much if you can do a value sketch. And as I say, I'm getting ready to do one, because I'm doing I'm doing one next. I'm doing a couple next week, but I'm ready to do a value sketch for for the, I think I'm doing an autumn scene next week as well. So anyway, yeah, so, but as I say, there are certain things that I encourage the beginner or the novice to do them, get used to doing them, like a value sketch, get used to doing them, because I know it's grunt work. Nobody wants to do grunt work. All they want to do is paint. But that little bit of grunt work is going to pay off in spades later. So that's what I really do encourage them to do. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much more I can tell you. I do a lot when I do a demonstration, and my demos take about an hour and a quarter to do. But as I'm painting, I'm also telling everyone not only what I'm doing, but why I'm doing it, so that they understand, well, okay, he's putting some darks in. Why is he doing that? Or he's putting some, some grays in there. Why is he doing that? Something of that nature. So,
Okay, Doug, I'm going to ask that along with where people can find your digital book or your watercolor book, if you could send me the links or just write it out on how people can find you with your classes for anyone who's interested.
sure.
And I can add that in the email with the recordings.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that, Anita. And you just reminded me of something as well. You notice the name of my book here is called Arrows in My Quiver. My studio gallery name, and it's a home studio, but my website also shows this, and it's Arrows in the Quiver. And I was going to tell you the genesis of that name. And it goes back probably 20, 25 years ago, around the same time I started teaching anyway. And I was fortunate enough to have people want to buy my watercolors, and I was quite pleased, like we all would be, that somebody who perhaps somebody you've never met all of a sudden comes up and says, "Yeah, I like that. Can I buy it?" And we all want that kind of recognition, I'm sure. And I had sold a few, and then my wife, who is my right hand when it comes to the business I'm in, because I have a small business, and she's my CFO, as I call her, my chief financial officer. And she said to me, and I'm going back 20, 25 years now. She says, you've never asked me if I ever liked any of those paintings. And I said, well, no, but I just figured you would mention it if you liked them. She said, you sold 2 or 3 of my very favorites. And I have one downstairs in our dining room right now that I've painted 4 times. I sold the first 3, but the 4th one I dare not. And it's of a European shoreline of Villefranche-sur-Mer. If anybody's ever been to the French Riviera, Villefranche-sur-Mer is right next to Monaco. And it was a beautiful, with the buildings and the sunlight hitting the buildings. It was, and I sold it, and good friends of ours actually purchased the first one. So that probably didn't go over all that well either. But so my response to her at the time when she said, gosh, you're selling all the ones I like. And I say, don't worry, dear. By the way, we've been married almost 52 years. So I said, don't worry, dear. I said, I have more arrows in the quiver. And I thought about that, and I said, gee, that would be a good name for my studio, my gallery. And so that's how it came about. Arrows in my quiver.
Thank you for
arrows.
sharing that. That's
Absolutely.
that's
a great
adorable.
story.
Very good.
Yeah. So anyway, that's it. And if you see a car going down the highway and with the license plate AITQ, that's me, arrows in the quiver.
I
So,
think that
anyway.
I've enjoyed this thoroughly, so thank you very much. And Sam, do you have any last words to say?
Well, I just want to say thank you as well. It was very enjoyable. It kept a smile on my face all the way through. I want to apologize to the group that wanted to sign on for this, that we had some technical difficulties. And so thankfully, Anita has recorded this and we'll be posting it. And I do want to remind you that we will be doing this again, and hopefully we will get some attendance, because yeah, we're working through the glitches. The next artist will be David McEwen in January. Keep your third Saturday morning of the month. That's what we are predicting. Keep your eyes on your email, and hopefully we will be able to have the next one without as many technical glitches.
Okay, and I want to again repeat, thank you so much for this, because